Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I am going to show you a little something that's a little different. It is how to enlarge a pattern without changing the count of your fabric. So the easiest way usually that you would enlarge is to use a lower count of fabric. So the count is how many squares there are per inch. So the lower the count, the fewer squares per inch, so the bigger it is. I remember it as the lower the count, the larger the finished piece. Little alliteration helps me to remember. So I bought this adorable pattern and I didn't realize when I bought it, it was really small. Like it's about, on 14 count, it's going to be like about 3 by 5. And I wanted something just a little bit bigger. And I didn't want to have to go and buy myself a bigger count of fabric. I think the biggest I've seen is 6, but I didn't feel like that. So one way to do it is you can work over 2 squares. So instead of working like normal where you do 1 stitch over 1 square, you do it over 2 squares. So there's 4 little boxes in each X. So that's one way to do it. How I'm going to do it is I'm going to do it as if I was stitching over 2 squares, but I'm going to stitch each little box in the 4 by itself. So 4 stitches for every 1 stitch on the pattern. I hope that's not too confusing. I'm going to demonstrate so it should hopefully make more sense what I'm talking about. So just going to load my pattern. I will put a link to this pattern. I found it on Etsy and it's just so darn cute. A little Legend of Zelda, making this for a sister-in-law who is a huge Zelda fan and who got married recently. So, all right, let's see. And luckily it worked on Pattern Keeper, which is always nice. Now in this one, I am not going to stitch parking like I normally do because this is not a full coverage piece. So I'm going to stitch this what they call cross country. So let's see, I'm going to start here with that heart and with the black. So remember, it's 4 stitches for every 1 stitch. So it will be twice as big since there's, instead of 1 per side, it's 2 per side. So it'll be twice as big in each direction. So just get myself a piece of floss here to get started. So the counting can be a little trickier. I'm not gridding this time, so you will have to count very carefully, but once you get used to it, it shouldn't be too difficult. So I'm going to make, a loop start as I usually do. All right. And I have the center is kind of nicely marked because of the crease where this was folded. So that will be, so the center hole is here. It's 3 stitches above, but remember we're doing 2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. I'm going to start with this one right here. So I'm going to do these 2 sort of together. So it's not just 2 stitches, remember. Actually, I'm going to do it one more to the side here. Yeah. So it's really straddling that center line as closely as possible. So 2 is the bottom of 1 of the stitches on the pattern. So it's similar to working over 2, except you are doing each little stitch individually. So if I was working over 2, it would be crossed, say, I'll just demonstrate over here. You would do a stitch like this with more threads, obviously, for better coverage, like that. But I didn't feel like working with like 6 threads for what is going to work out to be 7 count. So I'm just going to be doing more stitches as if this was a bigger pattern written for 14 count. So you can see I have 8 X's here to correspond to the 2 stitches on my pattern. So it's as if I was working over 2 threads. So I hope that makes sense to you. right, so now the next stitch. So we've done that. Now I'm going to do this next stitch. Oh, might highlight better if I put it on the correct setting. So again, as if I was working over 2 threads, would be this big stitch here. But instead, of course, as before, I am making 4 of them. And I generally don't cross as I go. I kind of like to do a bunch of stitches and then, so I'm going to carry on to the next one. So again, 4 stitches as if it was one big stitch. So requires a little more concentration, but it shouldn't be too terribly difficult. So we've got that. So now I'm going to do this next one here. So now I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I have these 2 like this. So I'm going to do this one, 4 stitches again per 1 stitch. I'm going to cross those. I kind of make almost like a maze, just however it happens to work out. As long as the finished product looks nice, that's all I care about, right? Then I'm going to carry this over here and do this big stitch or 4 little ones. All right. Just do these. So I'm just going to carry on like that. 4 stitches for every 1 stitch. So as if I'm working over 2, but I'm working every square in that over 2 as its own stitch. So I hope that makes sense. If it's still not clear, leave me a question in the comments and I will do my best to help you. And thanks for joining me today. All right, bye everybody.